Hello everybody, and welcome back to Evolving Vibes, the channel that is dedicated to the witchy and spiritual community. If this means something to you, and if this resonates, please be sure to like, subscribe, leave me that comment, let me know what you think. I'm trying to grow my community and trying to grow the channel, so every like, every comment certainly does help, as also does the views. So please be sure to check out these playlists and let me know. Now today, what does this and this have in common? Well, if you're a witch or friends of witch, you know this probably means someone's ending up in the freezer today. And that's what this is going to be all about today. We're talking about binding spells, which is one of our first forms of defense. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how to put someone into a binding situation and put them inside the freezer, thereas keeping you insulated from their negativity, their empowerment over you, and that sort of thing. So I do hope you like the video. Please be sure to stay to the end when you finally see the final result of this binding spell, and that actually ending up inside of the freezer. And I'll talk you through it all throughout the whole video. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again. So I'm in my yard. I'm fortunate enough to live in the woods, as you can see. Therefore, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of things outside, as well as collect ingredients for my binding spell. Now, I must make it clear, there are a literally ton of different ways of doing a freezer spell. And if you Google it, you'll find pages upon pages of different aspects of doing it. So this one right here is my own spell. It is my own process of doing it, and therefore whatever resonates with you, take away. What doesn't, leave behind, right? So first thing I'm going to do is just go through the yard, and I'm going to pick up some ingredients that I'm going to be putting inside my jar for the freezer. And I must caution you, one of these things is going to be poison ivy. So if you are going to be working with poison ivy, as I am, you want to be able to take some precautions. You're going to see me snipping some of the plants, but I'm going to be using gloves. I'm going to be extra careful not to get any of the oil on me, on the external aspects of my jar or my equipment, so as I don't come down with some poison ivy just a little bit later on, because honestly, none of us want that, right? So let's get to hunting down and collecting some poison ivy. You've probably heard before, leaves of three, let them be. So this right here is poison ivy, as is this over here. So I'm using these hemostats actually to grab onto it and to put it in the jar. And I'm of course wearing gloves just to be careful. As I said, I don't want poison ivy. I just want to make sure that it's going to my protection jar. So there's one, and there's two. Now I always do things in three, so here we go, our third piece. And that will go in there quite nicely. There we are. So I do have my poison ivy now inside the jar, and we'll continue working with it. There's a couple other things I do want to get out of the yard, so let's continue. Okay, so another thing that I was looking for in the yard, and I did find, was this seed casing, this thistle. As you can see, it's kind of spiky and such on the outside, and it's a protective case. This is sort of symbolizing exactly what I'm looking for. I want to, through energy, be placing myself into this barrier so that anyone trying to do harm to me, either physically or verbally or anything else, won't be able to penetrate. And these barbs are certainly going to affect them in their day. If they're trying to do negativity to me, it's going to go back onto them. So that's definitely going into the jar. I'm also at the base of my favorite tree. So I've taken, with permission, some pieces of bark. 1, 2, and 3. Asking the tree to also help me with this defensive and protective spell. Alright folks, welcome back. So I've already cleansed my space using Palo Santo, and I also have some frankincense burning in my cauldron. But I am going to cleanse the space yet again, just so that you can see it on camera. I've also collected all of the ingredients that I want for this video and for this spell, and actually put them all together too, so make it a little bit easier for me. So I'm going to put the Palo Santo down right on over here now, and I'm just going to talk about this candle. So behind the scenes, I already carved the candle up with the intent that I have for it, and I'm going to anoint it now with some oil. Now, it's important to remember when you're anointing the candle, if you're anointing upward, you want to push things away from you. If you're anointing downward, you want to bring things towards you. So in this particular sense, I'm asking for protection, as well as asking for keeping parties that question away from me. So I'm going to start by just getting this anointing oil on my fingers, and I'm focusing on who this actually is designed for and keeping them away from me and keeping their drama out of my life. Now, I also want protection front and defense, so I'm bringing in some defensive as well as protection energy to be involved in this spell as well. And you'll know when you're finished, but right now I believe this candle is anointed. So I shall put it back down. And I'm going to light the candle now for the rest of the ceremony. Now, personally, I prefer using stick matches when I light any magical objects. So here we go, using my stick match to light my candle and getting this spell rocking and rolling. Stick match goes in the cauldron. It's part of my magical properties. I just prefer that over using a regular lighter. So now I want to add things to this jar over here, right? So the first thing I'm going to add is a little bit of salt. So I'm taking some of my ceremonial salt out, and as I said, I do like doing things in threes, so it's going to be 3 pieces of salt. Along with that, I've got myself some black salt here, so I'm just going to put a wee bit of black salt in there as well, for protection as well as insulation, right? And because it wouldn't be bothersome to me if they were completely away from me and out of my life, I'm focusing that intent and putting some hot foot powder inside of my spell jar. And because it's important to me to know when there may be attacks coming or what might be going on, I'm putting a little dab of mugwort in that for my own third eye, for my own intuition, and so that I'm made aware of anything that might be going on from a circumstantial standpoint. And that goes in there. Now, the poison ivy is already in there, and that's to protect me. That's to make sure that I am insulated, but along with that, I put that in there so that if any actions are being taken against me, there'll be some form of warning sign. Like poison ivy gives a rash. If someone's acting against me in particular with their names in this jar, I'll be warned by it through the mugwort as well as through evidence with the poison ivy. So I take my wand, and I just focus that energy and funnel that energy into the jar for defense, for protection, and to bind the individuals that are involved in situations in my life currently. And I focus that intent, and I focus earth, air, fire, water, and spirit to come together to universally work for me to make this spell successful. As I will it, so mote it be. Now, I'm going to put the names in the jar, right? Okay, so I have added what I've needed to add into this paper, And you can see it's slightly wet. That's because it's a warm day out here. I use a little bit of my perspiration to put my energy into the jar in order to keep them at bay. It's my spell, so I'm making it a little bit my own. We can do the same type of work with saliva, with blood, with any type of body fluid or object in order to make that spell stronger into what our intent actually is. So now that that is done, that too is going into the jar. Now, mind you, first reflex is to try to put your finger in that jar and push down. Don't do that because of the poison ivy. So now what I have here is some storm water I collected from a local beach that I go to. So some storm water is definitely going into the jar. And some moon water is going into the jar. And finally, a little bit of protection water that I made last full moon is going into the jar. And that will amplify all of the effects. And again, it's most important right now for me not to push anything down in the jar with my bare fingers because of that poison ivy. So what I'm going to do is just use another object, push down what I want to push down, just like that. My wood bark, tree bark actually floated to the top, which is exactly what I wanted to have happen. And now I'm going to seal that jar with my intent. I did complete the spell jar. Everything's in there. I did put my black candle on top of the jar, and I'm going to let that burn out naturally. I did do an incantation off camera and put more intent into the jar using my grimoire, and because that's private, obviously I didn't share it. And so now all that's left to do is to allow this candle to burn down and then put this jar inside the freezer for however long it takes for them to no longer be a part of my life and no longer have any influence over me or anybody else that is very close to me that also may be targeted. That all being said, let me just remind you of candle safety, right? So I am letting this candle burn out, but I am staying inside the room with this candle burning so as to make sure there's no untoward accidents that might happen. The candles that I actually use are smaller spellcasting candles, so they burn out relatively quickly. I want to say it's like 8 to 10 minutes, but I can't remember exactly. So I'm just going to let that burn out. I'm just going to relax. And then this bad Larry is going to end up inside the freezer where I know the universe will have my back. So until the next video, please be safe, be well, and as always, be blessed.